Let's go.
Wednesday afternoon.
Do some homophobic chants or whatever, who are not a good advert for football. Nowadays, football very much at most stadiums is a family game. You see it when all the football that's on TV. You see the young kids with their parents there and so on. And it's a family sport. It's a sport loved around the world, especially the Premier League. It's in great demand. So, whereas in years gone by there have been big hooligan elements, that largely has been contained and hopefully stamped out. But it is only a minority of fans, I think, that give a bad reputation to the majority, and I suppose that's like life itself, isn't it? It's the small minority that spoil things for the majority, but such is life, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Now, the next topic that we're going to talk about is one that sort of borders on the politics of the game. So we don't talk politics on this show, but it sort of just borders on the politics of the game. And it's from a girl called Karen Carney. So she's calling for an equal split with sponsorship deals between men's and women's football clubs. Now, she says if football brands are going to sponsor a football club, they should have to split 50-50. And I'm gathering she's referring to a football club, meaning the male version and the female version of the same football club, not just
like Palace or Man United or all of them. Yeah, lots of the Premier teams have got women's teams.
Yeah. So she's saying, well, if they're sponsoring something, that's a big audience, and it shouldn't be just one type of audience. It's only fair. That's what she's saying. Now, I believe sometimes in the past we've talked about this. The fair play between the women's and the men's version of the game. Now, do you see anything right in what she's saying? We're not saying it's wrong. We're not saying it's right. We're just talking about it. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. I can understand where she's coming from. A lot of the Premier League teams, like, as I say, Manchester United, Man City, Palace, Liverpool, they've got their women's teams who, let's face it, are season by season increasing the profile of women's football, of the WSL, and it's good. I mean, they're watched by a lot more people now. Sky screens most of their matches every other week, I think, really, rather than every week they are. So there's lots of input from the media into the women's game, and rightly so. It's good to watch. It is very good to watch women's football. It's a different game to the men's, as we've said, but it is good to watch. Now, to come to Karen Carney's point, and she was a footballer herself, and I gather a very good one. And I actually think she's a very good pundit. It's not always easy for a woman pundit to comment on some of the men's games, because you could say, some people say, well, it's a different game, it's much tougher, it's a bit more brutal on the men's side. That may or may not be true, but she actually, amongst others as well, I think comments very, very, I don't mean to be patronising, but her comments are excellent. She clearly has a deep understanding of the game, of the professional game, and as it relates to both men's and women's. The only thing I would say against the idea of what she's suggesting is, why do companies sponsor football clubs? Well, they do it to get their profile up. One of the early sponsors a few years ago of Crystal Palace was Virgin, and that was always a very good sponsor for Palace, for obvious reasons. Virgin are very, very famous, and the fact that they sponsored
Soft family and the ladies, Dots of Gladys and Phantom and Rose. We all have a lovely show every weekday, so join us for a lovely show.
Say hello to Phantom, Dots of Gladys.
few years ago of Crystal Palace was Virgin, and that was always a very good sponsor for Palace for obvious reasons. Virgin are very, very famous, and the fact that they sponsored Crystal Palace was good for both parties. So that's why companies do it. Now, the whole point, it's all about marketability, isn't it? It's all about, as we say, the Premier League in demand around the world. So the theory, and I guess the practice, when all these matches are screened to literally billions of people around the world, then those sponsors, both on the shirts, on the sleeves, maybe around the ground and the advert hoardings, are going to be seen by millions and millions of people. Whether we always take those in, it's kind of subliminal, isn't it? We see them without looking at these things going around on these advertising electric hoarding things, and of course on the player shirts we get close-ups of the players. We don't really necessarily take on board that whatever the sponsor may be, Emirates, for example, at Arsenal, do we really watch Emirates? But then we think the Emirates Stadium, we hear that word, we hear it a lot. When Arsenal is concerned, we must see the word a lot. So there's a lot of brilliant advertising for that, as I understand it, that excellent airline and the planes they fly. But when the women play, and Arsenal, let's face it, have a good women's side, by definition, Emirates will not get anything like the coverage, the advertising that the men's side will. So maybe that's the principal argument against what Karen is saying, because it must have to do with the output of that advertising. And if you're reaching millions on the one hand, and you're reaching a few 100,000, however much that is growing, maybe that discrepancy would not warrant splitting the money in half. So that my view, therefore, would be in sympathy with what Karen Carney wants, and I can see why she's saying it. Perhaps also she's hoping it will elevate still further the women's game in the eyes of the public and so on. But I don't think financially the football club's accountants could justify saying, okay, well, let's split that down the middle for the reasons I've said. I mean, what's your view on that?
Well, I think if they go down the political route, which is shaming the sponsors by saying, well, you don't support women.
Well, is that what they've said then? Is that what they're saying?
No. I'm just, this is just my opinion,
right, okay.
my take on it. So if they go down the route of saying, doing a protest and saying, well,
Our family and the ladies, Dr. Gladys and Phantom and Rose, we all have a lovely show every weekday, so join us for a lovely show.
Say hello to fan.